Hello and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Zoe Hawkins, and my friend and co-host Jo Wheatley.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We are going to be talking to you about 8 end of year coaching questions that you might find useful. And we decided to do it in pairs. So we've got 4 questions or 4 topics, and we've got a question that relates to the year just gone and also the year ahead around that. All will become clear. I realize that sounds very confusing. But if you are thinking about Christmas crackers, a little bit inspired by that and how, you often get some pretty rubbish jokes in those Christmas crackers. So as an alternative, we're offering you these reflective questions, and you might even choose to share those with other people if you happen to be spending this period of time with other people too.
Absolutely. Not sure how my children would respond to replacing their Christmas cracker jokes with these not so easy to answer, roll off the tongue questions. So here we go. So I think a first reflective question we pose to you is, what has influenced me this year? And we mean that in the most expansive way. So what has influenced you? Maybe a person, maybe world events. It may be something that's happened in a friendship or in work, but just thinking, what has influenced you this year?
And let your unconscious mind speak as well as your conscious mind to that question. So just allowing a bit of space for you to really connect with that question and note down what comes up. And then as you look ahead into next year, the question we have for you is, who am I becoming?
Yeah. And these two are a pair because often what has shaped you, what has influenced you, over the course of life, but in this particular questioning a year, um, can set a new trajectory, can change certain paths. You might be opening up perspective to see things differently. And the picture that always comes to mind when I think around this, now that I have a dog as well, is when you go into the woods and you have the paths that are well trodden, and you have some of the paths off where maybe 1 or 2 people have kind of started to veer off the path. And then you've also got these paths that are yet to be made. Like, which are the paths that you're looking at when you think about who am I becoming? Are you taking the path that's well trodden and is clear and is laid out for you ahead? Are you going to veer slightly off course and take some I don't know, different directions, or you're going to make a new path, a whole new path for yourself in a direction that feels maybe a bit more risky or is uncharted in some way. So yeah, who are you becoming?
And I think that that's also thinking about choice, because your initial answer, flowing on from what, depending on what's influenced you, might feel like, oh, it's happening to you. You may feel a little bit passive around that. So explore what comes up for you there. And then also thinking, who do I choose to become over the course of the next year? What's my intent or my intentions for the year ahead? So that's your first, we say pair, but obviously we never
You just
actually,
wedged a third in there, Jo.
yeah,
Yeah.
we never actually keep to just 1 or 2. So take what's useful and move on with the rest. So next up, as we reflect on the year that has just been, is what world work have you done this year? And when we talk about world work, we're thinking about your broader contribution into the world. It doesn't have to be something huge to big audiences, but just the intention that you have, maybe in a particular area of interest that you're super passionate about, or a difference that you feel you're making in your part of the world that you think somehow is going to and does affect things on a broader level.
Do you know, I think these big questions can often leave people thinking, I haven't done any. Like, I don't do world work. But think about it in the sense of kindness is world work, listening is world work. So if you're a leader in an organization, or you're, um, a carer of elderly parents, or you're a mum who's doing the school run, tuning into this, just think like, where is your world work? Because we're all doing world work. Bring it into your conscious awareness. Raising a future generation, that's world work. end of life care and caring for elderly parents and celebrating and respecting the lives that they have led. That's world work. So where are you bringing world work? And if you're finding that that isn't easy for you to answer, then maybe the next question is for you, which is more about the forward thinking and the contribution that you want to make. So if you're not able to connect in with the contribution that you have had to the world, thinking about next year, well, what is the world calling you to do? What is brewing inside of you as a passion that you haven't yet fully embraced or had the opportunity to bring into the world? And this piece for us around world work is something we've been playing with, particularly this year, as we brought our foundations of group and team coaching out. And one of the core principles that lies throughout that program is about contribution to humanity. And I think we are, in ourselves and in the work that we do, stepping more into that piece around how are we consciously creating, shaping, and contributing to humanity and the world through the work that we do. And whilst it's always been there, it's now a much more conscious intention for us. We invite you to step into that and join us there.
And if it's not calling, like if the volume is not up on it for you, just try and tune into what is the world whispering for you to do. It's okay if it's a whisper, but just, if you just adjust the dial, what might you tap into? So see what's there for you. And you don't need to be able to answer these questions straight away. You can ponder on these questions for a whole month. There really is no time limit, or maybe it'll come back into your mind at a random point in time, or you'll drop it into a conversation with other people. Hey, I was listening to this podcast. They asked this question. What would you say to that? Maybe that invokes a really interesting conversation, something different to the conversations you might normally have. So, next up in our pairings of questions is reflecting on the year that has just been. What have you denied yourself? What have you not allowed in? Do you want to say more about that, Zoe?
Yeah, I mean, we often see this as a really powerful question in our emotions coaching practitioner training. I can't remember exactly where it sits, but this piece around, often in the relationship to our emotions, we deny ourselves the experience of certain emotions that may feel too taboo or off limits, or we have certain beliefs about for whatever reason. And that might be joy, right? You might deny yourself the emotion of joy. You might deny yourself the emotion of frustration. Like, it could be anything, but certain things are off limits. For me, I sometimes deny myself the emotion of anxiety. I have a bittersweet relationship with anxiety, which on the one hand, I'm a very peaceful, laid back person. But sometimes I don't notice when I am experiencing anxiety, and I deny myself the experience. And sometimes that anxiety can be useful. So it's not just about emotions, but it may be experiences. When we think about permission. So we shared on a previous podcast that I've been on a retreat this year, as have you, Joe. It would be very easy to deny myself that experience and tell myself the story that no, I'm needed at home, or I've got too many commitments and I can't do that because whatever, whatever, whatever. And I think we often deny ourselves things without fully consciously realizing that that was a choice and that we denied it for ourselves. So sometimes I think it could be really helpful to make contact with that so that you can then do something with it. Because if you don't recognize it as something you're denying, it stays hidden. So yeah, I think that's what I would say. How about you, Joe? Anything to build?
It was just reminding me of a conversation I had with a friend last week, and we were catching up, hadn't caught up for a while, and I was explaining that I was going away for the weekend to do a course, and she said to me, "Don't you feel guilty?" So that was the initial response, and I was able to say completely honestly and straight away, "No, I don't feel guilty about it." And it wasn't just like it wasn't a defensive response from me. It was genuine. And I suppose I've reflected on it since, that I wouldn't have always been able to say that. I would have probably often, in the past have said, yeah, I feel really guilty, but and I really didn't, because I'm in a space where I believe it's important to role model for my own children, you know, if they choose to become parents or able to become parents in the future, that you are more than a parent. And also for my recognizing my own needs is really important. And I think that's important for every individual. And I also feel that it's really useful for them to have time with their dad when I'm not there. You know, that relationship is different when I'm not there to when I am there. And also with the grandparents and, you know, all the other support networks. They're having fun, I'm having fun, and we've got new things to talk about when we're back. But I would have denied myself that
Mm.
many, many times in the
I, c- I
past.
I can catch myself denying myself, you know. So I know at times when we're planning experiences together, and you might, I think there was one this year where you said, oh, 10 days in such and such. My instant was like, can't do 10 days. Like, can't do 10 days. 10 days is too much. And that's just an instant denial. Whereas when I come and recognize that initial response, I'm like, I could do 10 days and I probably could put in everything that I wanted to do that. So then can I check, do I want to, or do I not want to? And not everybody is going to be in the same position, but checking in with yourself around what have you denied yourself this year, just so you can bring it into the conscious, and maybe you'd still make the same choice, that it wasn't appropriate or the timing wasn't right or whatever. But rather than just unconsciously deny it, choose, you know, and respect the decisions that you're making.
And then the pairing question for that is, what will you allow or welcome in next year?
Mm,
What is
yeah.
it that you want to welcome as an accompaniment, as company for you during the year ahead? Or perhaps you're already adapting that question in your own mind, because some of these questions might feel there's something useful in it for you, but maybe the wording doesn't quite land for you. Just adapt it to whatever's useful for you.
Yeah. And that might be more emotions that you want to experience. It might be more experiences. It may be relationships, connection, could be a whole number of things. But I think it's really powerful to give yourself permission to, yeah, have the experience that you want to have.
Of course, that might be training to be a coach with us, or doing some CPD with us, or joining us in one of our communities.
Great segue there, Joe.
Did I mean that wasn't planned, but it just felt like it was relevant. So, um, as
It's
we
almost like every now and again, it's, by the way, do you know that we are coaching trainers? By the way, do you know we've got these great courses? So, yeah, nice to bring that.
did you know that we're not only the coaching crowd, but actually we're in good company as our business? The thing that we need to work on, letting people know next year. So the final pairing of questions, I think this is, what and who are you grateful for this year? Or, and maybe it's also most grateful for. Hopefully, you are somebody that is regularly checking in, you know, on a daily basis, or even in the moment if you're able to, with that feeling of gratitude when things happen. I mean, I read lots of lovely posts in a like a Facebook group that I'm part of, where, in fact, I read this story. I'll maybe share it because I was amazed when I read it. So this lady had written and said that her and her partner were at these shops, and they happened to see this man with a t-shirt, and they just fell in love with the t-shirt. So much so, well, this is a husband, so much so, the wife, the lady, ran over to the guy with the t-shirt on to ask him, "What? I'm so sorry to bother you. We just absolutely love your t-shirt. Where did you get it from?" And he said the shop that he got it from. And she's like, do they still sell it? He's like, oh no, I bought it a few years ago. So she's like, oh, I'll like see if I can get it on eBay. And he took the t-shirt off and gave it to her. And she couldn't believe it that he'd done this. And she thanked him, and she went back to her husband, and her husband couldn't believe that this had happened, that this person had, you know, this t-shirt he obviously likes, he's given it to an absolute stranger. And she said, I didn't get his details. I want to be able to like pay him for the t-shirt, but I can't. So that was the reason she was posting it. But she said, you know, I'm going to pay that forward. And the lovely thing I think about gratitude is when you connect into gratitude, you're reminded what an amazing feeling it is. And you often want to then go and do something really nice and lovely again, like, you know, that generosity of spirit that it connects you in with. So, so who and what are you
Mm.
grateful for this year?
Takes me to two places, that story, Joe. Um, first one, obviously, many people will know I got a dog this year. And we have a coast path near where we live. And I have a really vivid reflection this year. I was walking along the coast path and it just hit me how grateful I was for my able body,
Mm.
because I love walking coastal paths and they are not easy to walk. And it really struck me how I'd never really been grateful for that before.
Mm.
That I have this ability to just be able to go and walk over rugged landscape and get right up and close to the edges of nature. And you've got country on one side and coast on the other, and this intersection of all that energy. And I was just so walking, I was so, so grateful to be able to have that experience. And I just felt called to share that.
Mm.
On the flip side, the other thing that the story reminded me of is merch, which we haven't talked about before. And as we've been noodling these different ideas for what's coming in our business, one brewing one is to be able to bring out, we don't even know what it will be yet, do we? Like coaching crowd merchandise, hoodies, and things like that. We've been really playful this year, haven't we, in our ideas? So as you were talking about the man who takes the t-shirt off, I was having
Ah,
visions.
that's the link,
That's
right?
where it came, where I was
Ah.
having visions of like, oh, people stopping people in the street and being like, I love your hoodie. Like, where did you, I'm a coach too. Like, where did you get yours from? So I just wanted to share that kind of playful angle of yeah, our creativity and ideas.
you know, and when you were sharing about your example of gratitude, the example that came into my mind is this course I was on recently, and I was late on the first day. I'd hate being late. I was like, oh, lots of courses, they say they start in a certain time and they always allow, time for stragglers. No, this wasn't one of those, unfortunately. So when I arrived, having had to turn around 600 times in a lane, sat nav's taking me round in circles, uh,
You
hungry.
needed me by your side. Like that's my zone of genius, being late.
Well, I was hungry because I'd had breakfast 2 hours ago, and then not knowing where you're going. Anyway, I walk it. I get my land my stuff. I can see everybody's taken their shoes off. The door's shut. Right, I better take my shoes off. I go in. I've got 3 bags because you need all this kit for this thing. They're in a circle, and I walk in, and there's fake candles everywhere, but they look like candles. There's all these instruments, and I just come in. I sit down, and the chair that's left for me, which is lovely because there was a chair for me. I didn't have to make loads of noise to bring the chair in. And I was next to the facilitator, and she ended up asking me to check in. Obviously, I apologized that I was late. And I then shared and carried on. So many people came up to me during the course of that weekend and said, the way you came in, you were so calm. Which I was like, I was calm. I had been stressed, well, not stressed, but felt a bit uncomfortable that I was late. But I was able to be calm. And I think my gratitude is that all the work that I have done, all the skills and the knowledge and experiences that I've had as a coach and with my coachees too, enables me to process emotions fairly quickly.
Mm.
And I was able to be fully present with the group instantaneously and leave. It's my stuff, all of that stuff. I didn't need to share that with the group. And I was just reflecting in that moment of actually how grateful I am that I have developed the ability to be able to do that.
It's transitions, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm. So the
So
final question, sorry, do you want to do this one?
you go for it.
So the final question is, how will I share my gratitude with others in the year ahead?
Yeah.
And I
And
think
we're not judging our timing today, are we? And I was going to say, we're very fortunate that we have this podcast that we can share some of those small moments of gratitude with each of you as you're listening. And I think gratitude is something that when shared, what's the words like, it becomes more powerful. I think gratitude shared rather than just gratitude kept for yourself, in your own reflections, the ability to share that with others, I think is that paying it forward, perhaps, that came from the story that you
Mm,
were sharing with us
mm,
earlier.
mm. I'm just sat here reflecting on, I think gratitude is an expression of love. And, as coaches, when I think about even chemistry conversations and you're kind of exploring, is there a connection here? Is there a feeling that that we could enjoy spending time together, and that that time would be meaningful and valuable both ways for the coach and the client. I always experience gratitude, with the clients that we go on to work with. Well, I'm grateful for every conversation in life, I think, but when you know there's a match, and you do know, like when there's a good match with this new person that you've met, the potential client, I'm so grateful in those moments that this stranger has somehow found me, and that I am always influenced by those conversations with the client. And I know they're coming for a service in a way, but it's a connection. I have huge gratitude in that space. And I think I also have always really hoped that the client feels that. I hope I'm able to express that to clients so that they recognize, that it's an equal synergistic relationship. We each bring
Mm.
different things to it. And I think that's a big part of what has kept my love for coaching going all of these years. It's as strong now as it's ever been.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of power in gratitude. I think particularly as a coach, I think it helps to attune your energy, where you want to be grounded and you want to be settled to do your client work, or, if you're not yet a coach, when you're training as a coach, there is this not expectation, but almost recognition that you are your person with your own life. And how do you settle yourself to be able to bring your energy into your client work? And I think gratitude is certainly one way that I do that. I notice when there's lots going on, I take a moment and I pause and I recognize, okay, so amongst all the chaos, like, what is it that I'm grateful for? And it's a really grounding technique. So yes, the question, how will I share my gratitude with the world?
And you might even choose to just kind of, if you're sat somewhere listening to this podcast, not if you're driving, but maybe just place a hand on your heart, maybe even a hand on your like solar plexus, and just make contact with that gratitude. And when you think about the gratitude you've had during this year or recently, or maybe even today when you're listening to it, and as you think about how you're going to share that gratitude with the world moving forwards, really connect with what is the intention around that.
Yeah.
So thank you all. We have a huge amount of gratitude for all of you that we're making this podcast for, and also all the work that you do, and the fact that we are all putting as much positive energy, love and intentions out into the world as we possibly can. So take some time to be grateful for who you are and who you're becoming.